All right, welcome, Blockheads. This is episode 79 of Business on the Block. Today is May 8th, 2024. It is now 9:31 a.m. East Coast, United States. I am joined, as always, by my lovely co-host, Michelle Peterson-Clark.
Hi, everyone.
And Mike Neubauer.
Hello.
This week, we're tackling Twitch for your news. This week on the pod, we're going to explore why Twitch is quietly becoming a leading news source. Yes, that's true. We'll also explain why the SEC now has Robinhood in their crosshairs. And we're going to consider whether the U.S. TikTok ban is going to destroy the creator economy. Those who follow that space closely, that's been the buzz in there. We come to you every Wednesday, 9:30 a.m. East Coast. And the breakdown is basically Michelle will bring the marketing chops. Mike will bring the operations perspective, and I'll be talking strategy. So I'm going to take us directly into story number one. Coming off the Washington Post, a growing number of live streamers have been covering the pro-Palestine student protests on the U.S. college campuses these days. And so as a result of this, Twitch is starting to resemble an alternative news network with round-the-clock coverage of these protests. So the students on campus are live streaming via Twitch, and this has become the go-to news source for the Gen Z folks who are following what's going on. There's been hours-long streams offering political commentary, breakdown, analysis, all around these news events from the students doing the broadcasting. And this is attracting young millennials, Gen Zs, and folks who really don't trust the mainstream news. And for those who have a few years on them like ourselves, this is reminiscent of the beginnings of the old cable news networks. So for commentary, we're going to start with you, Michelle. What do you think about Twitch becoming a source for news coverage?
Well, we were just talking about it before we came on air, but this generation do not watch traditional news services. They do not have their dinner at 5 p.m. and sit down at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. in the lounge as a family and watch the news, because that's what we used to do. You couldn't have coffee or a tea break until the ads were on in between the news, and someone would jump over the back of the couch to race to the kitchen to put the kettle on. And this is not what these kids do now. So what that means is that they're on other things. So they're on TikTok, they're on Twitch. They're on Twitch a lot with their gaming. So it makes sense that they are going to look to and follow creators on other platforms that are not traditional news for things like this. The other thing about this too is that if they are a trusted source for them, as in if this guy has previously, done games, or he has, open forums where he talks to people and all of that kind of stuff, they're going to trust him anyway, so that they know when he is live at something like this, at the protests, that what he's showing them is actually the truth. Kids these days do not trust traditional media, and we know why, because headlines, the way films are cut, if they've done particular filming, all of that stuff is set up to make whatever narrative it is that the big corporations want to get out there, sometimes in cahoots with the government, sometimes not. And they know that they can't trust that. And because of that, they're not watching the news anyway. So this, to me, this kind of isn't news, if you know what I mean.
So a lot of people on that point, Michelle, believe that the U.S. government banning of TikTok, which we'll tackle later, is connected to controlling the narrative. And to your point, these young folks don't want to take the narrative from another source. They want to get it from the streaming. Mike, what do you think about this? Twitch streamers becoming the go-to coverage?
Well, I mean, first of all, the whole, get together as a family, watch the news. I never did that. I don't know anybody that really got, was that super into the news and the shit that happened that day that they had to watch it as a family. But that aside, news, as we have even been groomed to appreciate it, has been dead for a long time. It is now just a spin of opinion, right? So, these anchors are paid ridiculous amounts of money to, push a specific narrative that either aligns with one way or another, while just, I guess, deflating the actual facts and just the meat and potatoes of whatever story it is.
Right.
And it's not just visual media, it's print media too. I mean, like, you walk into a 7-Eleven or any sort of convenience store and you look at two conflicting opinion papers sitting side by side, and the front page story on both of them will be completely different takes on the exact same topic. Now, where does Twitch fit into all this? Well, first of all, kids' attention spans are microseconds, right? So the other thing is that, we live in a world where news or information is put out there faster than the truth, which is a weird thing to say. But when you think about it, how many times has the wrong message been portrayed first and gone viral? Again, this is nothing more than a perspective. We have to understand that dude holding the camera with his stupid mask on is giving a perspective on the situation, right? So you might call it news, you might call it trustworthy. It's just a different perspective. And I don't necessarily think that, like, people follow Twitch streamers due to trust. I think they, most of the people that would watch a video that dude is posting right now would be confrontational about it, and they would follow that guy for that confrontation. And people get off on trying to start, keyboard wars behind some of these different types of posts. Now, where does Twitch fit into all this as a platform? Well, they're designed for streaming. So these guys can hold up that camera. He can connect it to a battery source that's in his pocket, as you can see. And he can just sit there with his phone all day long, just streaming and streaming and streaming and streaming and streaming. And where does this end up from a sponsorship perspective, right? So, like, we talk about the business end of all this. Sponsors are going to go to where people are watching. And if this type of stuff puts asses in the seats and eyes on the screen, who knows? That dude might be the next big Twitch star for doing what he's doing.
So, Mike, on that point, that's already happening right now. 3 aspects people should be aware of. Number one, Twitch is building brand. This is Twitch. We're talking about Twitch. This wasn't happening a couple of weeks ago. Number two, creators are building audience. These folks who have good commentary and insights are actually attracting huge audiences. And number three, there's no more centralized control of the information of the news itself. So you're gonna get your Lex Friedmans, your Joe Rogans, your these different people who are building audience now have a platform that will certainly put butts in seats and eyeballs on screens, as you say. So there's going to be a money into this at the end of it.
So I think that one of the things that we just need to be aware of is that there's no control over what's going out there. Right? Like, guys like Joe Rogan, they have produced podcasts, right? There's editing components to it. There's a narrative. There's a topic that's discussed. These are just people out there pretending that they're Dan Rather with a camera, right? I mean, when cameras first came out on cell phones, I mean, everyone and their mother tried to, pretend they were the next, great photographer, taking pictures of the tree blowing in the wind and, like random things like that. So this is no different from that type of, opportunity. But again, I feel like there's still very much a bias to whatever people are putting out because it is from that dude's perspective.
Years ago when the United States had the space shuttle explosion, you would put the television on to get the news, right? And then years and years later, there's a terror attack or whatnot, you would go to the internet to find out the news. It's now gotten to the point where you don't want any channel like that. You want it right from the person who's standing next to it with a camera. There's an earthquake in Bali or whatever, and there's someone broadcasting live. This is what we're seeing now. We're living in an instantaneous world, so that lends itself to streaming, and Twitch is the platform for that.
Well, again, the streaming makes it live, right? The record and post is even that's sort of outdated at this point.
Michelle, do you think this continues, or is this like a flash in the pan because of these protests in America, and afterwards that's it? Or does streaming become a news thing?
I think it already is a news thing, and I think that it is situational. So if someone happens to be in a situation where it happens, they stream it. There's been so many controversial live streams, haven't there been, on Facebook where, people are filming, mass
Horrible
shootings or stabbings or, all of that stuff. So, the instinct these days when you see something happening isn't to call 911. It's to actually get your phone out and start recording and then go, oh shit, that's bad. I better call someone.
Right. Disasters
That's
unfolding
really
in
where
real
we're
time.
at right now.
We've
Yeah.
seen this. There've been like ships being overturned and people on the boat are filming the flooding. And you're like, dude, get yourself to a life raft.
I was just going to say that exact same thing. I mean, the first instinct is to take out your phone instead of even just helping someone. Somebody falls down, you take out your phone and you try to record it because, you know, maybe there's that that desire to be, you know, that next video that goes viral, right? Which is very selfish, but it's also, you know, it's very troubling. I mean,
it's
like
it's
I'm guilty of it too, man.
It's
well,
not,
no,
it's
but
not
I mean, I'm
famous.
guilty of it too in the most minute sense, right? Like my son does something for the first time. The first thing I want to do is take out my phone so I can, you know, watch that experience through a 6-inch screen, right? You know, I mean, go to a concert now. What do you see at a concert? You see the asshole in front of you holding up a camera, watching the concert through his phone. It's the weirdest thing, man.
There was a very famous controversial photo of the Pope. I believe it was New York City. I could be wrong. Where an old woman was looking at a younger woman who was filming the Pope as he's walking by in the parade or rolling by. And the point was the debate over whether you should be enjoying the moment or filming it. And it's what you're saying, Mike. A lot of people, they're not trying to get famous. They're just trying to capture for posterity.
I get that, but again, this is a downfall, and Michelle nailed it on the head, like with what she described about the instinct, right? Like our instinct is to not live in the moment and appreciate everything. It's to literally figure out a way to pick up our device and live through that, but not in the moment. Later on, when we're sitting on our bed waiting to go to sleep, we recap the day through the photos we take.
So here's what I think for the business angle, and the purpose of this program is to bring you some business insights. I think that the news does continue to migrate towards live streaming in real time. That's what news really is, right? We're here on the scene live with whatever. That was what the best news people did. Number two, the control of the narrative is the real story here. I believe that the government, any government, is going to want to have control of the central narrative of whatever news event it is. History is written by the victors, and you can't do that when someone's live streaming it. So this is going to become problematic later. I think that Twitch is going to grow as a news platform-ish, and I think later on there's going to be some regulations down the line or something around corralling of this, because controlling narratives is really that's the cryptocurrency versus fiat thing problem. The government doesn't run that.
That's censorship. That's all it is.
Right. Final thoughts. We'll move to story 2.
Story 2.
All right, going on to story 2. This one is around the SEC can't stop suing crypto companies. This is coming off a CoinDesk. And before we get further into this story is definitely taking us into Conspiracy Corner. Donning my conspiracy Viking helmet for this one. All right, so basically Robinhood has been formally warned by the SEC that they are facing an enforcement action potentially tied to its crypto dealings. This is according to Reuters. The SEC has filed at least one lawsuit per month since last November against a crypto company. They are on a tear. SEC Chair Gary Gensler has stated directly he doesn't think crypto needs any bespoke legislation or guidance. So the SEC is going to steamroll, continuing to sue anything crypto. If it looks or talks or smells like crypto, they're going to sue it. Doesn't matter if it's defined as a security or not. This is just the path they've set on. Thoughts around this one, Mike? We'll start with you. I'm sure you've got thoughts around what
I'm not putting my conspiracy cap on today because we're well beyond the conspiracy of this. This has become a reality, right? Like they can't stop suing people. That's accurate. And I think the biggest reason why is because they're not getting the necessary pushback because people are scared. Obviously, you never want to go up against an endless resource in the government. But, at some point, somebody's got to push back in order to get an official ruling and legislation on the books that, future potential lawsuits can reference. And maybe Robinhood is that place. But what I find interesting about Robinhood, Robinhood is, they trade stocks too, right? Like they were the average pocket, broker, yes. And then all of a sudden they're on the radar for crypto. I thought
weren't they the GameStop people?
Crypto.
Yes.
Yes.
Wall Street Bets, GameStop, that was all done through Robinhood.
Yep.
So, it's not your traditional broker. It's not your traditional brokerage house. It's people that want to throw a couple bucks in and just try to trade on their own. And, they got into the crypto market because, frankly, it's a very similar type system. The only difference is obviously you're dealing with a global market, a whole different, onslaught of variables that we discuss here all the time between, classifying it as a security versus a currency. But from what I understand, they're going to push back on this. I'd like to see how far they push back. I would be willing to bet that at some point they just settle, which the SEC will chalk up as a win. They'll get their monster hand in the cookie jar again. We're back at square one until the next guy, jumps on their radar that they can pull a lawsuit on. So I don't know where all this ends up. Again, somebody has to sit back and actually regulate the regulators when it comes to this as well.
Michelle, is Mike right? Is this going to be just a settlement down the line?
Well, I'm starting to think that it's actually part of a revenue raising thing for the government. Like, honestly, they're doing it so often. It's like, we want another 10 million. I know, let's sue so-and-so. It's becoming that frequent. But one of the really interesting things I think from the story, Mike, if you scroll down a bit to where it talks about the paragraph that starts at Robinhood legal compliance, if you look at this paragraph, you'll see that they've delisted Solana, Polygon, Cardano, 3 of the standout tokens for the past 12 months.
Right.
So we can all say, can't we, that, the little guy likes to have a backlash against, things like the SEC, the government, regulation, all of that stuff. I don't think it's a coincidence that when you have large brokerage firms delist stuff like this and then they go gangbusters, it's people going, well, you know what, I like this anyway. And, it just means that ultimately the government didn't get any revenue from, the trading of those 3 particular tokens on Robinhood, because I'm assuming that, their fees that they charge, they have to pay tax on. So, I think it's an interesting way to look at it, where they go, okay, well, we don't want to do a Binance, we don't want to do a, is it Coinbase that they were also, jockling with earlier in the year. But we'll delist these tokens. But then people have gone, stuff you, we're going to buy them anyway. And they do.
All right. So here's what I'm thinking. I think that this is conspiracy. And here's why, Mike. This has nothing to do with securities or non-securities, although clearly we want to define this, right? That's the whole point here. This has everything to do with fiat currency printing. That as long as crypto exists, and the problem really here is none of the tokens listed, right? It's not going to be a Solana or it's going to be Bitcoin. They cannot have the ability to print money disappear on them, or they have to pay their debts. And that's every government, but the US I'm talking about right here. So what they do is the conspiracy don't define it as a security, just keep slapping lawsuits. We've been doing this now. Bitcoin's been around since 2009. They still haven't defined it. They're not going to. There's no intention to. They intentionally want to not define it. Again, we're in conspiracy corner. Bear with me. Because that way they continue to do this and use the fear of endless resources, to your point, Mike, to slap down any potential threat. But they still, at the end of the day, they still can't bring this to bear against Bitcoin, which is the problem. So I'd be interesting to watch this play out, but I think this is conspiracy to not define what is a security.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. When you say they're not defining it, who's not defining it?
In this case, the U.S. Congress, but the Securities and Exchange Commission. I'm reading a sentence right off of this article right here. It says the SEC. It's not clear which coins are considered, or which tokens are considered securities. All of them. They don't say that, but like the SEC
They say except Bitcoin at some point in here, doesn't it?
Well, Bitcoin is very clearly being used for nothing other than currency. And that's, again, the problem. But the point is, if they define it, Mike, you now can have a set of rules where Bitcoin can operate. Bitcoin can operate.
Okay. So again, I'm not an attorney, but I'm a logical guy, I would think.
I'm a guy wearing a Viking helmet right now. Keep going.
Yeah. So if the SEC cannot classify this as a security or not, why do they have jurisdiction to bring the lawsuits?
Because the SEC is the securities enforcement arm of the government that runs the reserve currency of the world.
But they can't define whether this is a security or a currency.
Well, they can. They won't define. I agree with you.
Okay, but my point is that a lucrative defense? I mean, these guys are probably, like, I'm sure the lawyers are slightly smarter than me. I mean, I wouldn't go too much, but you know, I would think that, you know,
nor are they as good.
There's a jurisdiction or boundary on making the case that this is not a security, and therefore forcing some sort of a government entity, whether it's the IRS or the Treasury Department, to coming after them in another way and trying to define it in that capacity. And then when they come after them, then you can say, well, it's not a currency, and prove it that way. So, like, round and round we go. Again, like, you can't fit it into a neat little box, but you can't just have random divisions and random companies just keep suing people if it doesn't fall under the purview of their statutes.
All right, I'm going to tell you how the government works. There's a meme going around the internet right now about the United States TSA, the Transportation Security Administration. To go through the airports in the U.S. now, anti-terrorism laws, etc., you can't bring more than 3.5 ounces of liquid. You know that, right? So 3.6, but okay. No good. 3.4, you're fine. The government works by making definitions, whether they make sense or not. They work off of specifics.
Yeah, 6 foot rule during the pandemic makes absolutely no sense.
Perfect. So my point is, they can define it. It won't make sense, but they're no stranger to making ridiculous, deliberations that this is what this is. They're not going to do it, not with this type of thing, because they do not want to define it on purpose, because then it allows it to operate inside the purview of whatever they've defined. They can't do that.
So I agree with you. And I don't recall one of these instances where the lawsuit went all the way down to judgment.
You're right. No. They're going to settle because they can't have it come to a final. It has to be like settled out of court, bunch of money. SEC makes their vig, as you make the point here, Michelle, you're right. And I think that at the end of the day, it still stays as this amorphous, unresolved, what is the thing?
Okay, so would it take, and I'm not speaking for Robinhood here, and maybe I should put my conspiracy cap on for this one, but is Robinhood in a place similar to their historical, we're going to push back against the machine efforts with GameStop, and at least facilitating that? Are they in a position to try and push back against this machine in order to have them define it? And if it costs them ridiculous amounts of money, at least people who want to play in this sandbox know that Robinhood is a place where obviously they are going to feel confident that they're not working with the government in trying to censor and eliminate this crypto stuff.
I think the answer to that is no. The fact that they've dropped Solana and Cardano and whatever it else was that I said that they
Polygon,
had done,
that's huge.
And Polygon, the fact that they dropped all three of those because other platforms had problems with them means they're a team player.
Bingo. This actually gets to Coinbase, which ironically is where this news is coming from. I feel like some of these, like if you play ball with the government, you're not going to get sued. If you don't play ball with the government, you're getting sued, which Coinbase got sued, and that's still going, by the way.
Yeah, but we've seen shades of them preparing to play ball with the government regardless. Yeah. Right. We covered this over a year ago on certain stories that they had, whether it's invasion of particular people's, information, revalidating that information on a quarterly basis. Like they go through ridiculous extremes to, try to play ball with the government. But as we saw, they came after them too. Right. So, is this all a money thing? Of course it is. At the end of the day, it's all about money. But, there is a modicum of control and power that's associated with this as well. And the only way that these things stop from the top down is if there's enough of a pushback from the ground up. And right. Yes. I don't know if Robinhood is that company, but at some point there can be a class action effect where all these companies get together and push back and force them to define what is crypto, what is the use case of crypto, and either force them to create a new division, which creates a nice, neat little box that they can put all this stuff in, or lean one way or another and then abide by the laws of whatever that box is that they put them in.
So I agree with you that I don't think Robinhood is the company to end the end all be all, force the issue, but they are the biggest we've seen so far. And I think until it becomes the New York Stock Exchange, it's not going to actually get resolved. And I don't think we get to there until Denise buys Coinbase down the road, but that's a whole nother conversation. I think that Robinhood will force this conversation inside legal circles of, well, what is this thing? Is it a security or not? So it won't get resolved, but it's going to escalate the matter because Robinhood they did this exact same thing, Michelle, to your point with the Wall Street bets. It shined a light on the fact that when the Wall Street hedge fund community was losing, the rules got changed to help them.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the shit boiled to the surface of the pool, right? And the SEC and the government at the top of that pool was getting the effects of that.
Right. So we'll see where it goes, but I think that this is going to there'll be more to come on this. But at the end of the day, I don't think the definition of a security ever gets resolved.
Not in any time soon.
All right. That's it for our conspiracy corner for you for this week.
One more comment on that, if I may. We're only talking about the U.S. as well. I mean, we fail to realize that there's a world outside of this country that still uses the same technology and the same crypto components. So while they think they're flexing here within our borders, and while there's a massive market here within the borders, they are actually driving, business and consumers to other areas in order to participate in this. Correct.
As a polite reminder, 33% of us are not from this country, Mike.
Yes.
So, but I will say that I agree with
God.
you. And I do say this though. I actually believe that the U.S. is representative, but there are two factions in the world. We've talked about this. There's the West and there's the East, and it's not in either's interest to allow the other to control the currency. So there is right now the reserve currency is run by the West, whether you like it or not, and there's going to be a push to overturn that. That just is, which means crypto never really can go away because it's just always become the tool of the other side.
But again, you have these archaic methods of trying to deal with it. They're going to fail, right? What crypto is that kid holding the camera streaming compared to the news?
Yeah, actually, yeah. Yes. I do that. I agree with you. All right. Yeah, taking us to story number 3. Is TikTok ban an extinction level event for the creator economy? TikTok's going to be banned by the U.S. for sure, unless ByteDance sells this thing in the next 9 months. ByteDance right now, TikTok is suing the U.S. government for First Amendment violations, right? They're saying they have a right to broadcast the way everyone else does. So what happens to all these creators on the platform is become the question. For a little background, Goldman Sachs in this article estimates the creator economy is a $250 billion industry today, and that is expected to double by 2027. So within the next 3-4 years. I think that this will be interesting to see what happens. The ban is pretty much accepted is going to happen. It may not, whatever. But in any case, there's a lot of folks who make money on TikTok right now. To get some thoughts on this, Michelle, we'll start with you. You actually run a separate podcast that discusses the creator economy every week.
I do. Tilt Your Business on Tuesdays at 12 noon Eastern, 5 p.m. BST. We have said it before, and I have said it probably almost weekly on my other podcast, rented land. This is what these people are building their businesses on. They have no control over either the algorithms or what the government may or may not do. There have been a litany of complaints since Facebook started, when people created Facebook groups for their business, and then, Facebook wanted them to pay so that their programs and their posts could be seen by all of their members of their groups. And then, like Instagram was the same. Then we've got YouTube, and it's exactly the same. What gets me and makes my blood boil when I read this story is that this is like the 15th iteration of these sorts of things, and people are still only building their businesses on this one thing. Like, it's insane. I don't get it. There have been, like, even if you read Dolly Girl magazine, I'm sure there's stuff about people being screwed over and out of their teenage income because the algorithm changed on something. And they lost their money. Like, there are stories everywhere, and I don't understand why people are still going all in with one thing like this that they don't own. Yeah, pivoting to other platforms is not easy. Why are they going to another platform? Why don't they have a website where they're building their own email list? Why don't they have other ways? Why have they not got a token or a digital coin, perhaps, where they can distribute information directly into the wallets of their customers? Like, I don't know. I'm going to just have to be quiet. Otherwise, I'm going to scream.
You're getting at business models, and I appreciate that, Michelle. I think that you're right. These folks, that a lot of the creators they're creators. They're not necessarily business minds. They're different. Mike, what do you think about this? This whole is this an extinction level event for the creator economy?
No. That's my take. Just no. No, I mean, I remember a world, a life, an existence in this universe before TikTok. As crazy as that, sounds. There were people that were monetizing online before this ridiculous platform emerged. So if we ban this in the US, obviously there's going to be a lot of temper tantrums. But this is actually going to prove the fallacy of that business model that these creators have created, right? Everything is predicated on likes and virality, and do you have the ability to get as many followers? But who is your core audience? Right? Again, people's attention spans are very minimal, right? So just because you're a hot chick and you work out at the gym and people follow you doesn't mean that they are your target audience, because the minute that your system goes down, they're going to find another hot chick that works out at the gym and follow them. So you become irrelevant in their world. And I'm using that as a stupid example, but it could be crypto bros. It could be, somebody that takes pictures of puppies. I mean, there's no targeted audience that you can carry from platform to platform. So a website with an email list, even that's sort of on rented land, because if that website server goes down, you're screwed. Sure. So, there's technological components that you still have to rely on in order to build some sort of a digital business. But, I think that these pivots are almost an essential piece in the life cycle of social media, right? We need the ability to prune and to, purge some of these different follower bases and these different platforms in order to have, just a sense of evolved technology on what these things are capable of. What is better on TikTok from a user perspective that's different from Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter? I mean, you can argue there's quite a bit, but I think that the premise of it is very similar.
The algorithm is different. And the algorithm.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like just the overall user experience when you're viewing content. It's very similar. Now, the content that you get pushed is very different based around the algorithm, right? And this is actually, most people who use TikTok that monetize on TikTok, they don't understand the dangers behind the algorithm as it compares to some of these other platforms. And we already know how dangerous those are.
But Mike, the algorithm is the difference, and I'll tell you why. It's the same user experience, if you will, when I walk into a McDonald's versus when I walk into a Five Guys. But it's a different experience. Right? You know what I mean? Like,
it's the same experience when you go into a McDonald's in Australia or London or New York.
Right.
Because it's cookie cutter in that
understand
respect.
Why? Because I get a burger?
Right. I mean, theoretically, in
like
any
the look, the feel, all of that stuff is the same.
I'm going to get a burger and fries no matter where I go. However, the experience at the end of the day is quite markedly different in each of these chains. So,
well, and it's a matter of what's pushed to you, right? Like if McDonald's knew that I'm a chicken nugget fan and I walk into McDonald's and it pushes chicken nuggets, that's TikTok. Right. They understand that based around previous history. Now, Facebook, Instagram, they all do that same thing. Again, the dangers behind the algorithm of TikTok is that it has more access to other pieces of your technological experience. Right. They can monitor your keystrokes when you start playing around on your phone. They can see exactly what you're typing out in messages off of TikTok. If TikTok is connected to another server or another system that you have, a computer, a tablet, whatever it is, like they can monitor all activity on those particular devices too. So, when you start looking at forget about the content creation component, but the geopolitical ramifications of having that information in a different, I guess, conflicting government. This has to be banned. Now, again, are people going to whine, complain, threaten to kill themselves? Yes, because this is the existence that gets them those followers on that platform.
So let's talk about the business aspect. This is a business show. What happens to all these creators that are on this platform when, let's say, theoretically, it gets banned?
They move to somewhere else, or they fade away into the ether. Again, there were people on MySpace that I guarantee you were monetizing.
Who remembers
What about
Vine?
people on? I knew people who had tens of thousands of people in their groups on Google Plus.
But look, okay, and I'm gonna resurrect. I'm gonna resurrect a prediction that I made at the end of the year that I'm still waiting to hear, Mike, you were right about. When that next platform emerges, it's a marathon sprint to get there and to bring as many people as you can to build it from the ground up. And Threads is that perfect example, right? Where's Threads now?
I'm going to take the other side of this respectfully, Mike. The new platform when TikTok goes away is going to be the old platform, TikTok, owned by a new person. Nothing's changed.
And that's fine. I get that part of it, right? And that's, again, if it's acquired. If it's not acquired, then what happens to the IP and all the ability to recreate that algorithm here?
It won't go away.
It's open market.
It's
right?
money. No, it's not going to go to zero. So but I have three thoughts on
this. Has happened before with things like Snapchat. Snapchat still exists, but is it huge? No. Right. I mean, I got introduced to Snapchat in a very unique way where a buddy was getting married. He made everybody basically download the platform and create stories as their own experience for his wedding. And he made his wedding video from that. Real unique story. What happened? Instagram came in, stole the technology. So now you have these reels or these different Instagram stories. That's essentially what Snapchat's technology was. So they just copied it and said, come after us.
That's unlike Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, right. So I guess the point is that at some point, and maybe some of these bigger tech companies besides TikTok are sitting there salivating, but they will recreate that exact same technology because they know the algorithm is addictive enough.
I have three thoughts on this. To your point, Michelle, the number one, truck drivers are facing extinction level event from autonomous driving, same as these creators. Right? These creators are the truck drivers. They know that change is about to happen. In this case, TikTok's going to be banned. What are you doing about it? Most truck drivers are just driving their trucks still. And most creators are just making on TikTok. So number one, there's going to be a problem there in terms of just staying on the platform because it's too hard to switch. That's going to continue. Number two, this just moving to a new platform is exactly right, Mike. I'm going to agree with you. The folks who do move to other platforms, a buddy of mine is a TikTok creator, millions of followers. He's like, I've been working hard to get it onto Instagram Reels. Great. The people who can do that transition, perfect. They'll continue. But most importantly,
why isn't he working hard to build his email list?
That's my point.
Or at least collect or make a token so that people can.
I want to pull the camera way back and know that we're in the social media world right now. We're entering an AI-driven everything, right? From avatars to content. So in an AI world, personality matters. Like the actual person, your personal experiences and your story, I think, become the differentiation. This is my personal beliefs. I could be wrong. This is a lot of what I teach here. So like if AI is driving personalization and brand building in the digital space, the creators on TikTok who can do that on a new platform will create their community, will create their email lists, Michelle. Those folks will become rich, and that becomes the business model. But it requires a business-minded approach, not a creator like I can make cool videos.
So here's a business idea, and I should patent this idea because somebody's going to take it
or share live on a podcast. Either one.
These TikTok creators, right? And we talk about, I guess the premise of this article is the creator economy dead. The answer is no. And you brought up a great point there with AI. So I'm going to throw out a hypothetical, and obviously, we have some time left in the show to bat this around. So I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. But if I'm a TikTok creator and I make specific content, let's take the clown from the protests that are going on in the university, and I'm giving my perspective on it. Why can't I, in creating my social media account on whatever platform, create this AI persona that is exactly the opposite of what I'm creating? And you're literally monetizing and you're burning the candle from both ends of the spectrum, because you're building these communities on conflicting arguments and basically posting the exact same thing at the exact same time from two different perspectives, using AI as the tool to do that. How is this, again, we're thinking mostly from a business perspective, the monetization element now doubles.
I agree with this, and I love it. This is exactly so. You're saying a simultaneous posting of a pro-Israel, pro-Palestine article saying why the other side sucks and is wrong. Or
and
Trump,
you can have
Biden,
your opinion, and then you can create an exact anti-you that's going to have the complete opposite opinion, and you're building two simultaneous communities, monetizing both at the same time. One is AI-driven, one is you.
Here's the problem I would see with that. I agree with you, by the way. I think that we'll see something like that. I'd never thought of that, Mike. That's genius. I do think, though, whichever person is the real person on that side of the argument will win, because people want real people.
I don't necessarily agree with that, because I think that in a digital world where we can't even define what a bot is now anyway with some of these posts. I mean, some of these posts make companies change multi-million-dollar marketing plans and budgets, and they're not even real people. Right. So we can't even determine what's a bot and what's not now. But as long as it echoes a preconceived notion of a specific argument, you're going to want to follow that and be engaged with it.
I think, though, the minute you have a real person driving it, I'm going to pick a personality example. Patrick Bet-David grew up in war-torn whatever, and now he's pro-capitalism. If I know that and I'm a capitalist guy, I like that. But then to know that he's also posting anti-capitalist communist stuff, I'd be like, what are you doing?
But you wouldn't know that it's him.
That's my point. So you're going to have it be under the radar where people don't, you don't know.
And yeah, it's a completely, separate personality. They don't even know it's you. But as a creator in this creator economy ecosystem, this is a way that you can live in both worlds on a new platform and monetize.
It's interesting. It's going to be a very dicey. You're operating in secret in a world that doesn't like secrets. The first thing I want to know
is secret. The whole thing is behind avatars and fake names.
When you read Kevin Kelly, 1,000 True Fans, or you read any type of inspirational, like eye-opening thing, Jack Dorsey had a bunch of these, the first thing you want to know is who's the guy that wrote this, or girl? Like, who's the person behind this thing? It's the first thing on everyone's mind.
That's the problem. The problem is we would ask those kind of questions. People like us would ask those kind of questions. Joe walking down the street is not asking those kind of questions.
There are dudes paying AI OnlyFans $5,000 a month.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like, they don't care if it's real. It satisfies a preconceived notion of them. So
I agree.
I guess, from the other side of it, the ego of the creator has to be sort of subsided, right? Because if his argument is always the one that wins at the end of the day, then he's going to constantly push in that direction. If you just sit back on the sideline in a neutral territory and just feed different things on both different perspectives, there's a monetary opportunity right there.
Interesting. I still think it comes down to the splintering of the control of the narrative. At the end of the day, if the same person is putting out two different versions of the same story and we're all doing that, there's no way any type of central control happens on what the story really is.
Well, then the government wins, I suppose, right? Because nothing is real anymore. Right.
But I also think that people aren't stupid and they will ask the critical questions. I don't believe that. I agree with you, Mike, that people spend $5,000 on OnlyFans that aren't real. Like, that's all true. But I think most people are critical thinkers underneath that. They want to know the story, like the truth.
I think you give people too much credit.
Maybe. But I do. And I feel like these kids today, especially, they are so savvy. The BS detector is on 1,000. They know what's up all the time. So I think that the honest approach of, hey, I'm doing this, I'm running two different news channels and you pick whichever one you want, is a better model of what you're talking about than, I don't know who's behind this, but there's someone enraging me and I like it.
It's still all a matter of perspective.
The problem with that too is that it's 50 years before those savvy kids are actually in a position to influence stuff. What we've got at the moment is people walking around everywhere in the world, when you ask them simple questions and they can't give you the answer.
You're getting a critical thought, and I agree with that. You want to be a critical thinker, but there's no question the young kids are already influencing, right? These Twitch streamers, a lot of them they're underage, some of them. I mean, I know you're in college, but there's kids that are moving money around on these companies because they're posting reviews.
But I mean, in terms of, maybe by then in 50 years' time, Bitcoin and whatever will or will not be called a security.
True.
Might take that long before the legislation comes through.
All right, recap for final thoughts. Story number one today was Twitch for the news. Basically, Twitch is becoming a leading news source for Gen Z, primarily being driven by the college protests in America right now. But you've got people who are just tuning in to get the political analysis and commentary from kids on live streams. Number two, in our conspiracy corner, we discussed the SEC will not stop suing crypto companies. Right now, they're going after Robinhood. Again, the SEC does not believe they need to even define what is a security, and yet they're suing continuously. And finally, TikTok, the ban should happen in 9 months if nothing changes. The creators on that platform, a lot of them are doing nothing. Many people think this is the end of the creator economy. I personally don't. What do you guys think about these stories? Final thoughts. Michelle, we'll start with you.
Oh, so my favorite was the third story about the TikTok ban, etc. No, it isn't the death of the creator economy. However, I just have to say to people, rented land, do something about it. Like, learn after, like, we're 20 plus years into this social thing. Get with the program.
Define the rented land for people.
So rented land is where you build your entire business on a platform that you do not have control over. So if, like, for example, which happens lots of times, YouTube turns off a streamer's, like, deletes their account or turns it off, or Facebook say, violate you and put you in the sin bin for whatever reason, all of that stuff. And suddenly you go from earning $1,000 or $5,000 a day to earning zero. You have absolutely no control over that. And getting back those accounts sometimes can be very, very difficult. However, if you have a website and I agree with you, Mike, yes, you have to rely on email servers and those sorts of things, but you can also periodically download your database so you have all your email addresses if something like that happened. Because in the old days, old days being 3 years ago, email platforms like I always say, is it MailChimp? My husband calls it Monkey Chimp, and in my head I was going Monkey Chimp. No, that's not it. MailChimp, for example, would not let you run crypto newsletters and things like that from their servers. So there are those sorts of things, but you are able to have control over who it is that wants to be hearing from you, and you can directly message them, email them, and in the case of a token or a coin or a digital asset, you can, using the blockchain, send them information directly into their wallets, which has no middle person whatsoever.
Interesting. Mike, final thoughts. The Twitch, as a news source, the SEC suing, and TikTok banning.
Well, the SEC, I think we covered pretty extensively, but I want to link the first story and the third story, and potentially predict some of the dangers that are affiliated within AI. Again, we are in such a heightened state of responsiveness based around the first thing we see. The question of whether it's real or not comes after the initial reaction, and sometimes that's days later. Sometimes we don't even know if it's real, if it's accurate or whatever, but how soon before there's an AI system that can affect live streaming through platforms like Twitch, so that, clown wearing the mask with his perspective on the phone is actually giving a different perspective as it runs through some sort of an AI filter. Is that the potential dangers? I mean, look, there's two sides to every story, and then there's the truth. If you really are interested in seeking out the truth, the one thing you have to understand and question is that the first thing you see is probably not correct. The consistent narrative that's pushed across, some of these platforms that all have this power control agenda is probably not accurate. And the more you experience life, the more you'll understand that, you need to get out and you need to figure things out for yourself, or just focus on the things that are important to you and forget about the noise that's out there.
Everything else. Yeah.
And I think that, if people can create content around things that are interesting versus opinion-based facts, I think that the creator economy is still very much alive.
So for my part, the story that really catches my interest here is this Twitch one. I'm a pragmatist. I really don't care how things turn. I care how can the business community benefit and leverage it. So call me a Wall Street capitalist. I feel like if attention is shifting right now, if the news, we know the death of news traditional has happened. Where is it gone? We're still trying to figure that out, but Twitch is clearly in the running. Attention is shifting to Twitch. I'm interested. This program right now, Business on the Block, is going out over Twitch and has been for the last several months. So, and why are we there? Because there's eyeballs there. So I feel like people in any sort of a business capacity should be keeping an eye closely on where is attention shifting. Right now, the government doesn't like all the attention TikTok is able to directly influence kids. If you guys remember a few weeks back, the news was being watched on TikTok, and that didn't sit right with a lot of people. This is the way it's developing. That's what I care about. So the SEC is going to continue to sue. Yes, I agree that there's going to be half the creators will make the transition and pivot out of TikTok, and many won't. I don't care. What I care is if the business that we're all trying to build in whatever capacity you're building it, you need to know where the eyeballs are. And right now, Twitch is something that's worth watching that maybe wasn't worth watching a year ago, but it is now. All right. Thanks for everyone for listening. We appreciate the support. As always, the Bolt community, shout out special for those guys. We come to you every week, Wednesday on 9:30 a.m. East Coast. The purpose of this program is to bring you a business conversation around the developments in the digital business world. We always believe that we're not specifically crypto. We tend to be heavily blockchain, but we believe that the world of business is changing, mostly due to these digital platforms, AI, blockchain. There's new ways of creating new business models. And so we try to bring a little bit of insight around how you, in your business capacity, can start to think, what are these tools? How can I use them? How can I help grow my business? I want to thank Michelle and Mike, as always, this week. It's been fun.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everyone.
Final thoughts, final goodbyes.
Bye.
We'll see you guys next week.